This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Anjali Kamat. We're in New Orleans. Our guests are around the world. We're going to turn right now to Richard Falk, the UN Special Rapporteur for Human Rights in the Palestinian territories. This issue of international law, of international waters. Richard Falk, talk about your reaction to what took place. I had originally said on Sunday morning, in fact, it was 4 o'clock Monday morning, on the waters, on the high seas, when the Israeli commandos raided the Gaza Freedom Flotilla.
Good morning, Amy. This was a shocking incident that involved, as your other guests have said, a complete disregard of international law in several respects. It was an act of naked aggression. It was done on the high seas. It was done in defiance of elementary humanitarian standards. It was known that this flotilla had no weapons. It was not a security issue by the remotest stretch of the imagination. If there was a right of self-defense, it belonged to the people on board these ships. Israel, as the aggressing state and political actor, had no claim whatsoever of self-defense. It's an absurdity, and one can only imagine if another country that the United States didn't like had engaged in this kind of behavior, we would have been denouncing them, or worse, using force. One can only imagine what would happen if Iran had done something of this comparably outrageous character and sought to provide some kind of legal cover for it while silencing those that actually experienced the incident. So I feel that we've almost never seen such a direct confrontation with the most elementary principles of international law. And it is a disgrace that our government has decided to stand apart from all other countries in the world, including our normal European friends, and withheld denunciation and a call for lifting the blockade, because one needs to appreciate that underneath this criminal act, which amounts to a crime against humanity, underneath this has been the almost 3 years of criminal blockade of the people of Gaza. The blockade is a direct violation of Article 33 of the Fourth Geneva Convention that prohibits collective punishment. And this is one of the first examples where a civilian population has been locked inside a zone that has been subjected to this kind of mental and physical threat to subsistence and survival.
Richard Falk, given the international outcry over this incident, do you think there will be enough pressure to implement the recommendations of the Goldstone report to finally lift the siege on Gaza?
It is hard to tell at this point. What is clear is that the United States continues in its role as the protector of Israeli impunity in circumstances that are so extreme that it will build additional anti-U.S. attitudes throughout the world, not only in the Islamic world. And it is probably a matter that will be determined in large part by how sustained the civil society reaction to these events are. I've said for some time that the best hope for the Palestinians is not at a governmental level or through reliance on the United Nations, but rather through the boycott divestment and sanctions campaign, which has increasingly come to resemble the anti-apartheid campaign that was so successful in delegitimizing the racist regime in South Africa. I think this legitimacy war is being waged now as the primary arena of struggle, and it has shown the immoral failure of established governments to do what should have been done years ago, and insisted that this blockade be lifted, and used nonviolent coercion by way of sanctions in the event that Israel continued to refuse to end the blockade. It is a crime that has no borders at this point, and it's only the peoples of the world really that represent the conscience of humanity in a circumstance of this kind.
We're talking to Richard Falk, UN Special Rapporteur for Human Rights in the Palestinian territories and the occupied territories. The countries that have called in the Israeli ambassador for an explanation are Austria, Belgium, Brazil, Cyprus, Denmark, Egypt, Finland, France, Greece, Ireland, Jordan, New Zealand, among others. Ali Abunimah, can you talk about the videotape? And again, we have to stress in the brief coverage that we see in the U.S. media right now, because we do not even know the names of the dead or the injured, not to mention hundreds of people who are now in jail in Israel. We're only getting one side here. But the videotape that the Israeli government is showing of what happened on the lead ship, on the Turkish ship, Ali.
Yes, I mean, what we have to do is put all this in the context of Israel's propaganda strategy. What they've done is imposed a total news blackout. Hundreds of people are detained. They've had no access to lawyers, certainly no access to media. It was reported there was one Al Jazeera cameraman of the 6 Al Jazeera staff who were kidnapped with the ships who was released. And what he said is that all the passengers were allowed to leave the ships only with their passports, with no other personal belongings. He was personally attacked by Israeli soldiers while he was filming and his camera smashed. In any case, no journalists were allowed to leave the ships with any film or any recordings whatsoever. We don't know the names of the dead. The families of all those passengers are anxiously awaiting news of their loved ones. Why is this? So that the Israeli narrative can get a long head start. This is all about the Israeli propaganda strategy to give the Israeli propagandists like Mark Regev a free run. They've had more than 24 hours. And Amy, it's working in the mainstream media because they're only reporting, the atrocious